Greetings, everyone. This is Claire Chrétien with LifeSite News. I am here with Father Mark White, a truly heroic priest. If you don't know his name, you should, and you need to know his story. Father, thank you so much for being with us here today.
It's a privilege, Claire.
And driving all this way to our brand new Front Royal studio.
I'm very impressed.
So, before we talk about your current canonical situation, just tell us a little bit about yourself. What made you want to become a priest?
Ever since I was a young boy, I was in love with Jesus Christ, compelled by him, wanted to know him better and follow him. I grew up a Protestant. We heard the gospel read every Sunday like Catholics do at Mass. And from my earliest memories, I remember just wanting to know more and more about this man in the Gospels. And then when I was in college, I walked into a Catholic church, I think for the first time in my life, just to get out of the rain. I was out for a walk, and I became aware that I was in the presence of God like I never had been before. I didn't even exactly know what a tabernacle was, but he overwhelmed me with the sense of his presence in the Blessed Sacrament. So I knew from that day that I was supposed to be a priest.
And then you officially converted.
I did,
And how did your family feel about it?
My mom had a tough time at first. She got to know the priest who helped bring me into the church. That helped a lot. And she's gotten used to being the mother of a priest over the past 3 decades.
So you converted in college, and then did you enter the seminary right away?
I did. Yeah, I worked in the Jesuit Volunteer Corps for a couple of years, and then went in the seminary after that.
And you entered the seminary through the Archdiocese of Washington.
That's right.
Well, is that because of your location or because you were drawn to a particular...
I grew up in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
In Northwest Washington.
Okay.
So it was my hometown.
Okay. And what school did you go to there?
Catholic University.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you went to college there too?
I was an undergraduate there, and
okay.
I was a student there when I became Catholic. And
Okay.
then I went back there to the seminary also.
So you were at theological college there?
I was.
And then you were ordained in 2003?
Correct.
And you were ordained by someone who is no longer a cardinal or even a priest, then Cardinal Theodore McCarrick.
Correct. Right.
So, of course, we all know now that McCarrick was a serial predator who's preying upon seminarians, preying upon vulnerable people whose souls he was supposed to be taking care of. But at the time, you knew none of this. No one did, or a lot of people didn't.
Exactly. Yes, especially in the Archdiocese of Washington, many of us really didn't know. And he told us seminarians that the rumors about him were not true. And we really had no choice but to accept that. So
yeah, and when you're a seminarian, it's like being a private or a colonel in the army, and your bishop's like your general. I mean, you kind of have to do everything he says, right? And you can't really question him.
Right. Yeah, you have to please him, otherwise you're not going to get ordained. And the more you believe that the Lord's calling you to be a priest, which I certainly did, the more incumbent upon you is it to please your
of course
ordaining prelate. So
and were you ordained at St. Matthew's Cathedral?
we were ordained in the shrine. There were 9
Basilica.
of us. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was the biggest class in a long time.
And so what were your first few years like as a priest?
They were wonderful, very enchanting. I was very happy young priest, and I was a little stunned when Cardinal McCarrick retired as precipitously as he did in 2006. But I really didn't think a whole lot about it at the time. It turns out that was actually pretty significant.
And Cardinal Wuerl replaced him.
Correct, right.
So what were some of the parishes you served in D.C.?
I was at Holy Comforter, St. Cyprian on East Capitol Street, where Monsignor Pope is the pastor now. I was in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, and Prince George's County for some time. Then I was at Holy Name on Capitol Hill also in the district. And then when I was in the seminary, I learned about the fact that there were other dioceses in the country that didn't have anywhere near as many priests as they needed. We never exactly had that problem in the Archdiocese of Washington because there were always religious order priests working at Catholic University around to help out.
Right.
So
Or CUA students who are already ordained getting their masters or whatever.
Exactly, right. So I had conceived this plan that someday I would volunteer to go to another diocese where there was more of a need. And then right at the beginning of 2011, I volunteered to do that and wound up transferring to the Diocese of Richmond.
And did you have Richmond in mind, or did you just sort of say to the cardinal, any diocese in the U.S. will do?
I actually had Richmond in mind because of my mom. I was going to wait for her to go to the next life before I made that move. But she's still with us now, a decade later. So I didn't want to be too far from her.
Okay.
So Richmond seemed like the right
And
answer.
Richmond needed priests.
Yeah, they were very happy to have me. Yeah,
And so when you transferred to Richmond, Di Lorenzo was the bishop?
that's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what was parish life like in Richmond?
It was good. I was assigned to the two little parishes where I was until last year in Southwest Virginia, near Roanoke, south of Roanoke. But basically 50% English-speaking, 50% Spanish-speaking communities, both of them. And it was weird getting used to being the pastor of two parishes that are a 40-minute drive away from each other. But once I got used to it, it was fine, and I was very happy.
Did you live at one of them or in between?
I lived half the week at each of
Okay.
them. Yeah, because there were already residences. There had been two different priests prior to my arrival there, so there was a place for me to live in both towns. So I took advantage of that.
And so in 2008, you started a blog.
That's right.
And
yeah.
what did you blog about?
I mainly started it because people would ask me for copies of my homily after Sunday masses all the time. I don't know why, but they wanted to read them, and it just occurred to me it'll be easier if I can say, well, if all you need is this website and you can go and read them and whatever you want, and I don't have to go Xerox these things all the time. So that was the main reason I started it, and then I threw in stuff about sports. I mean, I like football and basketball, so I'd write about that a little bit and try to make it fun. I love Shakespeare, so I wrote a lot about Shakespeare. It was mainly so that people could read my homilies. And if controversial topics were being discussed, especially like in the news, in a way that it was hard to cover in a homily, I would also write about that on my blog too, and try to help people that way.
And so you were just happily plugging along as this small town parish priest with a free blog. It's a Blogspot blog, right?
WordPress.
Free WordPress blog. And then when did the trouble with the bishop and the blog start? Did it start when Di Lorenzo died and was replaced by Bishop Knestout?
I appreciate the question. Bishop Di Lorenzo died at the end of the summer of 2017.
Okay.
Bishop Knestout came. He was appointed by the Holy Father in December of that same year, 2017. He came January 2018. Cardinal Worrell and Cardinal McCarrick were at his installation. Nobody thought anything of it at the time. June of that same year, the Archdiocese of New York made its announcement about the finding of a credible allegation against Cardinal McCarrick.
Right, and so McCarrick was, when Knestout came, Knestout was an auxiliary bishop of Washington, D.C.
Prior to his coming to Richmond.
Before
right.
Richmond. So Worrell, his sort of head bishop, if you will, the main Cardinal Archbishop of Washington, was there at his installation as Richmond bishop, and McCarrick, the retired Washington, D.C. Cardinal, was also there.
That's correct. Right.
And so then Knestout is your bishop. And what happened next?
Right. Well, I mean, he and I had known each other for over 20 years.
Because of the D.C. connection.
Exactly. Right. So I was glad to welcome him down there. I joked with him about how he was following me down to Richmond because I'd already been there for 7-8 years. But then when the world became aware of the truth about McCarrick, or began to become aware of the truth, and the truth, we can't really thank the church for the truth coming out, because really James Grine, one of his survivors, who, once the announcement was made about the credible allegation in New York, in the Archdiocese of New York, James then spoke the truth about what had happened to him, and that whole episode put me, and I think a lot of people, through a very jarring spiritual experience, and a lot of things about the institution that I trusted, I realized that trust was misplaced, and so I tried to think all that through and understand it, and I had my blog, and I thought, this is perfect. I can write about this in this forum. I mean, I gave a homily or two because, of course, later that same summer, the Pennsylvania Grand Jury Report was published, and that was a huge blow to every Catholic, I think, on earth, certainly in our part of the world. So I preached about it, and we had parish meetings about it, which were very helpful, I think, gave people a chance to express their sense of betrayal of trust, which we were all experiencing pretty profoundly. But I really wanted to understand, especially what had happened with McCarrick, since I was there at the time and didn't know, and that was very difficult thing for me to go through, to imagine that there was a shadow world of knowledge about something very evil that was kind of on the other side of a very thin wall from me, where I was believing in something holy and sacred that I was committing my life to here, and all of us were. So I wrote extensively about that, tried to understand it. I appointed myself James Grind's amanuensis. Like every time he would speak anywhere that summer and fall, I would post a link to it on my blog. I had a collection of links. And then when Archbishop Vigano released his testimony about the whole thing, which kind of blew the lid off the idea that this was fairly widespread knowledge in certain circles and the
highest levels of the
church's
hierarchy.
Authority. I tried to process that and understand it. So yeah, I was going through some hard times and really trying to find a way to just keep going as a parish priest for the people. I didn't want to just collapse in a puddle, and writing about it on my blog really helped me. I thought, okay, if I can write about this and try to figure it out for myself, people who want to read it can read it. If they're not interested, they don't have to. I never mentioned my blog in the church even once.
Right.
Then I thought, I can do this. I can get through this. That's what was going through my mind at the time. But I did write an open letter to the Holy Father, where I begged him to replace all the cardinals with priests chosen at random from around the world, and maybe we could just start over with
Interesting,
them.
yeah.
And when I wrote that, then I got a call from the bishop's office.
And what did the call? Was it the bishop himself or someone in there?
It was not. It was his priest secretary at the time, who since has become the vicar general. But he said the bishop wants you to take this post down, and I agreed to do it. I mean, I'm an obedient priest. I thought, that's what I've always wanted to be.
So you took it down?
I did. I asked for a reason. I thought, this would be a lot easier for me if I can get a reason in writing. And that took a little bit of back and forth, because the bishop then said that I had requested a meeting, which I never did. I wanted to understand why he was asking me to do this better. I didn't demand it. I just asked for it. And he wrote me a letter that I thought was really unfair, where he was accusing me of demanding that the Holy Father resign, which is not, I didn't demand anything. I was really begging him to see what we were going through.
Right.
And so that was a pretty painful thing, to get a letter that was accusing me of things I hadn't even done.
So you took the blog post down?
I did. Yeah, I did. I took it down. I don't think it had. I think he was maybe trying to send me a message. Stay away from this topic. He didn't come out and say that. I didn't do that. So
you took the blog post down, and then you kept writing. You kept just saying your masses, giving your homilies, hearing confessions, doing normal priest things, and posting on your WordPress blog when you had time.
Exactly. Yeah, I'd usually write late at night. I mean, that was my routine. Because I couldn't sleep right, to be honest with you. I mean, I went for over a year just not being able to sleep because of this McCarrick thing, because it bothered me so much.
Well, and he's the man who literally made you a priest.
Exactly.
With his ecclesial power, I guess, and his sacramental, imbibing of the sacrament on you. I'm not using the proper canonical terms, but he's the guy who ordained you, so that's a big deal.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And the church is. I mean, the church is based on the idea that it is a direct connection with the Lord Jesus Christ. That's
apostolic
what happens
succession, exactly.
through the sacrament being handed on this way.
Exactly.
And I've never doubted that for a second. I mean, I've never doubted that I'm a validly ordained priest. I mean, that's not what this is about. It's about the trusting the institution, because we can't really be Catholics without trusting the institution, but we can't be blind to evident dishonesty.
Right.
That would not be the right way to deal with. That wouldn't be. To me, that doesn't seem like faith. If you believe, then you can face when things are messed up.
Right.
That's the way I was trying to approach it.
Yeah, and you can believe that the church is the spotless bride of Christ, but run by people, some of whom are corrupt or evil, and some of whom are normal and good.
Exactly, and those two things are not incompatible at all.
Right.
I mean, it actually is supernatural faith when you face the fact that could be true. If it's all about just the human dimension being nice all the time, that's not supernatural faith at all. I mean, am I making sense when I say that?
Yeah, totally. I think a lot of Catholics feel that way. What happened? What was the next interaction with the bishop?
Right. Okay. So
you're blogging along. You're just
right. Exactly. Well, and there's a little bit of a back and forth where he had said that I asked for an appointment, which I never really did, but it was clear that he wanted to talk this over with me. So I said, well, maybe we could meet at our priest convocation that we were going to have a couple months later. I never got an answer to that.
okay.
Then another year goes by, and the world is waiting for the McCarrick report. It's not.
Right.
It's not coming. There's no sign that it's imminent in any way. This is now the fall of 2019. He wants me to come in and talk to him about my blog. I ask him which can you tell me what post do you want to talk about? That has become a very serious issue here, is where I want to talk to him about precisely which piece of information or statement that I've made he doesn't agree with, who he thinks is wrong, and I can't get an answer. So we're going back and forth on that. And then this is fall of 2019, and then the next thing I know that happens is he shows up at the church. He and his secretary have driven 3 hours without any notice, basically to kind of ambush me after Mass. He knows I'm going to be there because I got the daily Mass, to read a document to me that I thought I was going to get a copy of, but at the end of it, he told me that I wasn't going to get one.
And what did it say?
It more or less said that I had done the great harm to the church by writing these blog posts that I'd written, and that I was now under threat of serious repercussions if I didn't eliminate the whole thing from the internet completely.
Okay. And what was your reaction?
I didn't think it was right. I didn't think it was fair, but I wanted to. He left without any real discussion, and said, "We'll see if you obey." And I didn't want the situation to turn into an immediate disaster, so I obeyed him. I turned it off, and then spent the next 4 months trying to get answers to those kind of questions, like what exactly have I written that you think is wrong? Is there something unorthodox? Is there something? What exactly is the problem here? I need to understand that, because what you've asked me to do is having repercussions for me personally. It's having repercussions for our community life, because even though I never said anything about the blog in church, people did read it. And,
what happened to Father's blog?
Right,
it disappeared off the internet. Something obviously happened.
Exactly. So anyway, we got nowhere. I had a meeting with him. I thought we were making some progress, but we weren't. So I was facing a situation where I knew I needed at some point in time to go ahead and turn it back on and face whatever would come my way, because I couldn't go on the way that I was forever, where I felt like I had submitted something that was a betrayal of really what we stand for as Christians, to be honest with you. And I was betraying a lot of people who believed in me, and so I was praying to the Lord for a sign, like, okay, I understand that someday I'm going to have to do this, and I'm prepared to do it. You just give me some sign as to when. And then the coronavirus came, and everybody in the Catholic world was talking about how important it was to connect with our people on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to close the church and not allow people in at all. And I thought, well, you couldn't give me a much clearer sign than that, that I'm supposed to use this means of communicating with people that I have, that I developed over the course of over a decade. I had a pretty big readership, not just my own people, but really all over the world. So I took that as the sign that the moment had come, and I turned it back on. And it never occurred to me in a million years that what would happen in the ensuing weeks, the way that it would happen the way that it did.
So what happened?
The bishop did not. I had written him a letter giving my reasoning for why I was doing this.
You said, "Hey, FYI, heads up, I'm reactivating my blog. You had originally told me to take it down, but I'm gonna start blogging again."
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And trying to explain why, and not being confrontational, and wanting to have a conversation about it, like I hoped to have all along, and hope that he would recognize we're in a kind of unprecedented situation here, where the only way we have to reach our people.
But all the lady were told, you can live stream mass on Sunday. Well, woe to him who has no internet.
Right, exactly.
Slow internet connection while you're cooked. No mass for you. Too bad.
Right.
So yeah.
Right, and I shouldn't have, because I called all my parishioners, right? So I mean, we had the telephone also. I did.
Yeah.
But anyway, he wrote a letter to the parishioners. He never answered my letter, accusing me of being a schismatic. And the next thing I knew, he was saying that I was removed as pastor. I tried to answer that with the regular process for how that's supposed to work. That you're not supposed to just be yanked out as pastor against your will. I mean, there's a process in canon law for.
You're supposed to have like a designated time where you're. I mean, isn't it usually 6 or 8 years or something like that?
Well, exactly. When I was actually appointed for an indefinite period of time, I wasn't even appointed for a term.
Okay.
But exactly, it's supposed to happen. It's much more helpful to everybody involved.
The bishop's supposed to give you a heads up if you're about to get moved.
Exactly. Yeah, and if you're being removed out, I mean, this was not the normal time of year for people to be transferred. Yeah. So, and you're not supposed to be removed against your will without this process going. Okay. Where if he thinks there's a really serious reason why you're not serving the people the way you should be, that he explains that to you and asks you to resign, and none of that happened. And then you're supposed to be allowed to appeal to the Vatican before having to leave. You're supposed the pastor has the right to appeal and get a hearing from the Vatican before he has to move to the new assignment, whatever it may be. Because if the Vatican comes down on his side, then he stays.
But that didn't happen. You didn't get the Vatican appeal heard.
It never got heard because of this technicality that my canon lawyer, I think, assumed he was dealing with people that were going to kind of be reasonable with him, and he wasn't. That's more or less what happened. So yeah, I was not upheld at the Vatican as far as remaining as the pastor. I accepted that. The bishop had talked about making me a prison chaplain for the diocese, which I would be perfectly happy to do. So I said I'm ready and willing to do that, but he wouldn't give me my faculties back if I still had a blog. So we've been at that impasse now.
So you're not allowed to publicly say mass. You're not allowed to hear confessions unless someone's bleeding out and about to die, basically. And you're not allowed to baptize babies unless
they're near
danger
death.
of death. Yeah. Right. You're not allowed to do weddings.
Correct.
Not allowed to do funerals.
That's right.
And what is the next step in this? The bishop wants to totally strip you of your priesthood and laicize you?
He does.
And
right.
How do you know? I mean, has he explicitly said this? Is there a trial date? How does it work when a bishop wants to laicize a priest who doesn't want to be laicized?
Right. I appreciate the question. I can't say I know for sure. I got a letter from him asking me to consider requesting it myself. I have never had any intention of doing that. He didn't give me a whole lot of time to think about that, because then 3 weeks later I got another letter saying, well, I went ahead and petitioned for it myself, that you would be dismissed from the clerical state. And to this day, whatever he sent to Rome, I've never even seen. So, I mean, apparently there are provisions for removing priests who haven't served in ministry for a long time, or who have civilly married a woman. I mean, things like that. If they're without the priest himself requesting it, I don't fit into any of these categories. So I honestly don't know where this is going, and I don't understand it.
And are you technically incarnated in Washington, D.C. still?
No, Richmond. I became a Richmond
You
priest.
transferred fully to Richmond?
Yeah, back in 2015.
Okay. So you're kind of out of options. I mean, you can't just go to another diocese because Bishop Knestout would have to sign off on that, right?
That is correct. Right. Yeah.
And when is the next decision or communique from the Vatican expected?
I wish I knew. Yeah, I mean, that's part of what makes this whole thing so difficult for me, and I think difficult for everybody. And one of the things that I have, I'll be honest, been writing blog posts about is that all these processes need to be more open and more accessible to the general public, because I'm a priest and I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, well,
So-
generally, I found that generally certain factions in the church, the more leftist factions, if you will, the sort of McCarrick factions, they don't care about process, they care about outcomes. And that's why in all these synods and all these random church meetings happening in Rome, whatever the normal, proper, canonical process is, it's either not made clear or it's just ignored, and it doesn't matter because outcomes are what matter. It's like the liberal justices on the Supreme Court in the U.S. They don't really seem to care about process as much as outcomes. They don't seem to care about the reasoning behind whatever particular argument, for overturning Roe v. Wade or whatever. They just care about the outcome. And I mean, I think conservatives and Orthodox people need to be more like that, actually, and instead of just being, we're just going to follow the process. Well, we also need to get things done. And anyways, I'm the one saying this, not Father Bishop Knestout. If you're watching this, I hope you reinstate Father. I'm the one saying this, not him. So don't get mad at him for just being in my presence. But
Bless you.
yeah, that's and so do you get paid by the diocese, or is your bank account suspended? What's the deal with that? Do you have health insurance?
Right. No, thank God. I mean, I guess that's part of why one of the many reasons why this is so painful to me. I mean, to give him his due, he has been providing me with sustenance over the course of the past
bishop
year,
has been,
right, which is his duty. I mean, that's.
But if you were laicized, you wouldn't be getting.
Exactly, I'd be off the health plan,
okay.
No pension, nothing. I mean, I really would be completely in the hands of Providence at that point, which we all are all the time anyway. So I mean, I trust him, and.
But you would. It's. Right now you're on the diocesan health plan and you're getting paid, but you're not allowed to act as a priest. So what are you supposed to do all day?
Right.
I mean, what do you do all day?
I pray a lot. Yeah. So yeah.
Can you privately offer mass?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You can offer it for yourself.
Right.
Just not for other people.
Right.
You can do it alone in your house.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
But not publicly.
Right. Yeah, and I can pray, offer mass for other people as far as like praying for the repose of their souls and stuff like that. I do that all the time, and
you pray the liturgy of the hours.
of course, yeah. I promise to do that, and that's my life. I mean, so yeah. Really, it's like I'm a hermit of a priest.
Yeah, you're like a hermit.
Which I never thought that was what I would be wind up supposed to be doing, but somehow in the hand of God, that's at least for the time being the way it is. And I wrote a book about all this. I'm trying to finish it up and get it published, because I think it would be helpful to get the whole story out.
Don't publish it on WordPress. It's gonna be more trouble for you.
Right. All right. Okay.
Publish it under a pseudonym.
Right. At this point,
Instead of Father Mark White, Father.
Well, I think people will know.
Father Marcus Whitehouse or something. Yeah.
Okay. Right. God help us. Yeah.
Well, it's very weird that all of this happened, because you're not some renegade priest. You're not going off trying to fake ordain a woman or do some weird clown mass or something. Right. You were literally just a very average parish priest, who had a blog, and a lot of priests have blogs, by the way. I see it all the time. I see they're on Twitter, and they have their own blog, and they put up their homilies, or they put up the videos of the homilies now with the coronavirus, or they write a little, reflection on whatever passage from the Bible or a particular book by a saint. So it's not unusual at all for a priest to have a blog. Right. It's not unusual at all for a priest to comment on current events. In fact, a lot of the priests commenting on current events now are, I think, should be maybe defrocked for what they're saying, because they're praising intrinsic evils, which should not be praised by a Catholic priest. But it's so totally normal for a priest to just have a blog and write about things. Priests are on social media, they're on Twitter, they're on Facebook, and it's not ever seen as like a liability or anything off about it. Some priests are actually great photographers. I'm thinking one in particular, and they take these beautiful pictures of other liturgies, and it's very, very weird. And this is all because you wrote about the McCarrick case, and you are a very unique person to write about it because you were actually ordained by him. When we were talking earlier, you mentioned that you'd been in touch with some victims of sex abuse in the Richmond diocese. Are you able to elaborate on any of that?
Sure.
What's the situation there? I mean, how bad is it? Have victims been? Have their concerns been addressed? Are you concerned that there are still predator priests in active ministry?
I appreciate the question. I don't know of any predator priests in active ministry. It doesn't mean that there aren't any. I mean, as it is the case in a lot of places, we're talking about people, for the most part, who were victimized sexually when they were minors many years ago. But as far as what needs to happen, what happened in our diocese is not unlike what happened in a lot of other dioceses, where this kind of victimization went on for a long periods of time, was covered up. The more painful aspect of it for a lot of the people that have been involved in it is having been victimized in that way, having achieved enough clarity to see that truth, because that in and of itself is kind of a miracle when someone who's been sexually victimized finds the sense of self-worth and the love of the Heavenly Father to see, this is not what I deserve something better than this. To reach that point, to go to the church seeking some kind of the situation being addressed in a reasonable manner, and that happened in our diocese in the 80s and the 90s, going into the 2000s, and did not get that at all. I mean, the normal, what we've heard 100 times now since the Boston Globe Spotlight report came out, the transfers, the obfuscation.
There's a complaint about Father. He gets sent off to another parish across town, and then there's a complaint about him there, and he gets sent to another parish, and just on and on.
Exactly. Yeah, and a predator priest who was reported on in our diocese went on to become the founding bishop of another diocese. This is
a priest from Richmond.
Yeah, exactly. Became the first bishop of Memphis. And
what is his name?
I'm trying to think I can't remember his name right now. Maybe we can shoot this part.
Yeah.
I can look it up because I can't think of his name at this moment.
But anyways, he went on to be the founding bishop.
Right, exactly. And all this was all under the radar. And it remains that way. Like you've heard about these reconciliation programs. That's the one in New York is how the McCarrick jig was finally up, because someone that he had abused when he was a minor. The reconciliation program is where the diocese basically gives to lawyers authority to deal with the victims, give them money, and there's no acknowledgement by any party of any guilt or innocence of anything. It's all just...
But the diocese is giving money to people who say they were abused by priests and who likely have a lot of evidence and testimony.
But none of that has to come out.
But the diocese isn't admitting liability, but it's... Right. Anyone with a brain can look at it and say, okay, you clearly had a predator priest problem, and now you're trying to deal with it.
Exactly. Right. And so we've had that. We've had a reconciliation program in our diocese, but it has not resulted in any of the truth about these things coming out, and we haven't provided the kind of information as an institution that we owe to the survivors, so that they can know, so they can connect with each other, so that as a group they can know their common truth. I mean, it just seems to me something that would be obvious if the intention were really honest on our part. We would see from the point of view of the survivor what would help a survivor deal with this type of situation. And money is something. I mean, that people need money. Your earning potential is seriously harmed by having suffered sexual abuse as a minor.
Of course.
But even more important is information, is an acknowledgement of the truth and
justice. You know, that this priest is at the very least never allowed to be around kids again, but probably should be punished a lot more than that.
Right. Well, exactly. Yeah, and that's one of the ironies of my situation, that numerous survivors have said to me how incredibly ironic it is. Their own abuser was never laicized. Right. And now here I am facing laicization.
Right.
I mean,
it's so insane. It's so backwards. It's so upside down.
Right. Yeah. It is. Well, and what I've been blogging about this whole time is, why can't we just deal with this? It's not like it's that complicated. If we didn't have anything to hide, if there wasn't like a spider web of loyalties that got in the way,
which McCarrick was deeply involved in. I mean, McCarrick has his ties in many dioceses. A lot of bishops were really close to him. They thank him in a way in their coat of arms. They're like, oh, this is a reference to Cardinal McCarrick. You know, each bishop has his own coat of arms, and they can decide. They put a lion or a cross or whatever in it. There are at least a few bishops who have said, in their explanation of why they chose their coat of arms, why they mentioned, you know, this is a reference to Cardinal McCarrick. Right. This was all obviously before the revelations about him became public, but yeah, why can't we stop? Why can't the church just get the creeps out? Don't let any guy who's got an issue sexually in any way become a priest. And why can't the bishops, take care of this? And why can't we get the bad bishops out? Why can't Pope Francis clean up shop and say, tell a bunch of bishops to pack their bags? And, many people have said Pope Francis should resign over a lot of the McCarrick stuff, the revelations that he knew and had been warned by Archbishop Vigano about McCarrick's predation, and Pope Francis still let him, help broker deals with communist China and be globetrotting around the world. Anyways, you have a canonical case with Rome, so I'm the one saying this, not you. But that's just my reaction. I mean, there are so many good priests who, if we would just promote them and let them be running things, we wouldn't have these problems. But instead, it's like, you got to promote your friends and all this nepotism and weird stuff with McCarrick's cronies. They're all just running the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's hard. And I mean, I appreciate what you just said, but that is another sentiment that has motivated my blogging from when this all started. Was we Catholics, we just want to belong to a church that we can believe in, where we don't have to try to explain to people who say, well, it's all just a totally corrupt organization of criminal child predators, where we don't, and we try to say that it's not, but we don't have convincing evidence. I mean, we just want not to have that problem, because it gets in the way of what we're supposed to be doing, which is expanding our church, drawing people into the life of communion with Christ, which is what it's all for.
Yeah, it's salvation of souls.
And the Lord is with us. It's not like the Lord isn't with us, but this problem gets in the way, and it's like, we can't solve it, because back when I was in my 20s, it was a problem, and now I'm in my 50s, and we're going through the same thing, where we never quite reckon with the truth fully enough that we win people's trust back. And it doesn't seem to be that complicated to achieve that. Painful. We have to be willing to jettison some things that we probably don't need anyway, and then we could really get back to the work of what we're supposed to be doing. But we just keep running into the same wall, and that's what doesn't, I think, make sense to me and doesn't make sense to a lot of Catholics.
What can ordinary Catholics do other than pray for you?
Thanks. I appreciate that. I'm very grateful for
Help with the
prayers.
financial support. I mean, is that
I,
how expensive is a canonical trial?
yeah, it's not cheap. Yeah,
Really?
I mean, canon law help doesn't come free, and I'm going to be facing some pretty big legal bills, so I definitely could use some financial help also.
And where, other than LifeSite, I mean, will you be posting about your canonical situation on your blog still?
Yes.
Okay, and
absolutely.
of course we want to keep reporting it at LifeSite, giving people updates
Thank you.
about what they can do and what the latest is. It's very depressing that this whole situation is so, it's like shrouded in darkness. You know, you don't know, you don't have a trial date. You're just sort of waiting. I guess the
Exactly.
U.S. right to a speedy trial is not necessarily
Right.
part of canon law.
Right. Yeah.
But we'll certainly be praying for you, Father, and
Thank you, Claire.
we really appreciate, you coming into studio and explaining this whole situation to us.
Thank you for having me.
A really unjust, bizarre, random thing that happened to you where you were just behaving like any other normal priest and suddenly the hammer's coming down on you, or the mitre, or the crozier, whatever.
Right.
Whatever can be used. So,
Right.
well, is there anything else that you'd like to add, or
No, I
any
appreciate
closing
it,
thoughts?
Claire. It's a privilege to be with you, and thank you for your good work. And may the Lord help us see us all through this. May His will be done.
Amen. Well, thank you so much again for your time, Father Mark White, and we will definitely be keeping everyone updated about this case, and hopefully the next time you're with us, you'll be fully reinstated. Maybe you'll even be made a bishop, and we'll have Bishop White with us. So who knows? Could be the next pope. I don't know. Stranger things have happened. So God bless you, Father, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.